Hi everybody, it's great to see you again. So the last time I was here, we discussed what personal boundaries look like for us and how to recognize if a boundary violation has occurred. So let's do a quick review to see what we remember from last class. So who can tell me what a personal boundary is? Yeah, you're right. So a personal boundary is what you're comfortable with and what you're not comfortable with. Great. So can someone give me an example of a personal boundary? Yeah. So if you like hugs or not, that's a great example of a personal boundary. Can someone give me another example? Yes. Yeah. So whether you want to, share your fries with someone or not, maybe you're not into that, that's definitely a personal boundary. That's a great one. All right. So what are the four main factors that kind of tell you if something is a boundary or not, or that have an impact on your boundaries? So there are four of them. I want one from, 4 different people. Yes. All right, so your relationship with the person. Yeah, totally right. So your boundaries are gonna be different with your parents versus your friends or your teachers. So definitely, your relationship with the person has a big impact. All right, what's another one? Yes. Yeah, so your mood or feelings that day. That's a great one. So some days, you may be feeling great and you totally, want to share your fries with your friends at lunch. And then some days you're like, not having it. These are my fries. I'm going to eat all of them right now. So your mood can definitely dictate, what your boundaries are in any given day. That's great. Okay, there are 2 more. Who's going to get it? Yes. Yeah, so where you're at, that's great. So your boundaries are going to be different when you're at home versus at school, at the mall, in gym class, in math class. Where you are has a big impact on your boundaries. That's awesome. All right, who can get the last one? So close. All right, who you're around. Yeah, that's awesome. So, your boundaries are going to be different when you are with your friends versus you're in maybe a class with people that you don't know so well. Like what you're going to be comfortable with will definitely change depending on who you're around. All right, that was awesome, you all. What a great recap. I'm so glad that you remembered so many things from last class. So thank you all so much. So today, very exciting, we'll be talking more about boundaries and then how you can recognize if a boundary violation is happening for yourself or for other people. All right, so we're gonna start out with an activity. So I need 3 volunteers to come help me out with this. All right, who's it gonna be? Okay, James, Marta, and Sarah. Why don't you all come on up here and I'll explain the activity. All right, so I'm gonna have each of you in 3 different roles throughout the course of this activity. So James, I'm gonna have you start over here as my person who's gonna stand still. You'll know what that means in a minute. All right, Marta, I'm gonna have you stand over here and you're gonna be the person who will walk towards James. But wait, not until I tell you to, so stay there, Marta. And then Sarah, you are going to observe what happens between Marta and James, okay? All right, so in this first round, when Marta walks towards you, James, I want you to show that you're starting to feel uncomfortable or, you want her to stop, your personal space is getting invaded. I want you to show that with your words. All right, so you might say something like, stop, go away, back off, whatever, with your words, you're gonna show that you are starting to get uncomfortable, your personal space is getting invaded, and you don't want her to come any closer. All right, Marta, when I tell you to, I want you to walk towards James, and when you can tell from his words that he wants you to stop, I want you to stop, okay? And then Sarah, I'm gonna have you look at what's happening between Marta and James so that we can, get some more detail on the situation. All right, so everyone know what your role is, what you're gonna be doing? Okay, great. Ready, go. All right, so that was great. So how did you know, Sarah, that James was uncomfortable based on the words that he said? Yeah, you're totally right. So he said, "Stop, back away," when he started to feel uncomfortable and felt like Marta was getting into his personal space. That's awesome. All right. So James, how did it feel being the person who, your boundaries were starting to be violated or your personal bubble was being crossed? Yeah, it felt kind of uncomfortable, that's for sure. Yeah, and like when you were able to use your words to say stop and Marta stopped, like that was pretty good. You felt like you had control of the situation, so that's great. So how did it feel to observe this boundary violation? Was it a little weird? Yeah, that's fair. All right, so now I'm gonna have you all switch roles. So James, I'm gonna need you to come over here and you are going to now be the person who will walk towards the standing person. Marta, you're gonna be our observer. And then Sarah, you're gonna be the person standing still. All right, so in the second round, Sarah, I need you to show that your personal space is starting to be invaded by using just your facial expressions. So nothing else, just your face, to show that you are starting to feel uncomfortable, your personal bubble is, being crossed, all of that. And then James, when I tell you to go, you're gonna walk towards Sarah and then stop when you can tell based on her facial expressions that she doesn't want you to come any closer. All right? And then Marta, you're going to observe what happens. Okay, ready everybody? All right, go. Okay, great. So that was awesome, thank you all. So Marta, how could you tell that Sarah was starting to feel a little bit uncomfortable and like that James was getting too close and she didn't like it? Yeah, so she kind of scrunched up her face and went, like, get away from me, please. Yeah, no, that's great. So Sarah, how did it feel being the person whose, personal bubble was getting invaded there? Yeah, so it felt uncomfortable, definitely. And like when you couldn't use any words to say stop, just doing it with your face, you were like, I really hope he knows that my face is telling him to stop. Yeah, no, that's great. And so how did it feel to observe this boundary violation happening? Yeah, so just observing and not being able to do anything, you felt a little powerless, like you wanted to intervene, but you couldn't because you were just the observer. Yeah, that totally makes sense. All right. So last time we're gonna switch roles. So Sarah, I'm gonna have you be the person who's walking towards the standing person. James, you're gonna be our observer. And then Marta, you're gonna be the standing person, okay? So in this one, Marta, I want you to show when you want Sarah to stop, when your personal space is getting invaded, I want you to show that with your body language. So just like with the movements of your body, show that you want Sarah to stop. And so Sarah, when I tell you to, I want you to walk towards Marta and stop once you can tell by her body language that she does not want you to come any further. And then, James, you're going to observe and kind of let us know what happens, all right? So everybody ready? Okay. All right, let's go. Okay, great. So you all did a great job that time too. So James, you are our observer. So what did you notice? How could you tell that Sarah's or that Marta's boundaries were starting to be violated? Okay, yeah. So she backed up really far and put her hands up. Yep, that was a pretty clear sign that she did not want Sarah to come any further. You're right. Yeah, and so Marta, how did it feel to have your boundaries start to get violated? Yeah, so you didn't like it, you were like, get away please. Yeah, totally fair. And then how did it feel to observe that happening? A little weird? Yeah, that makes sense. All right, so today we're gonna watch a video and I'm gonna play the video the first time and I want you all just to watch it, see what happens. And then I'm gonna play it a second time and I want you to look out for how you can tell boundaries were violated in the video. All right, so I'm gonna go ahead and start the video.
Hey, Riley.
Hi, Mark. It's great to see you.
No, stop. I don't like hugs.
Oh, I didn't know. Sorry.
It's okay. Now you know for next time.
Okay, so now that we've watched the video, we know that we can tell like Mark doesn't like hugs. But how do we tell that a hug is a boundary violation for Mark? Okay, yeah, so he said, no, stop. He sounded kind of concerned. He, stepped backwards, had a cringing facial expression. Yeah, all of those are great ways to tell that a hug was a boundary violation for Mark. And how do you think Mark felt as Riley was moving forward to give him a hug? Maybe surprised, maybe a little scared, uncertain. Yeah, those are great answers. So, can you think of some instances when people don't stop when you've asked them to? Yeah, so sometimes when your friends are picking on you and at first it's kind of funny and you're like, oh, stop. But then it becomes less funny and you're like, no, actually stop. But they think you're still kidding. Yeah, no, that's definitely something that's happened. We've all experienced that. And, it's not great, is it? So how do you think someone else feels when you don't stop when they ask you to? So they might feel really annoyed, like we just talked about. Like if you're being picked on and you just don't like it anymore, you might get really annoyed. You might get angry. You might not want to hang out with people anymore. Yeah, those are all really great answers. And then what are some consequences of not stopping when you've been asked to stop? Yeah. So you might get in a fight with the person. Yeah, that's definitely a possibility. Not what we want to do, but it is a possibility. Who else? Yeah. So the person might stop hanging out with you. They don't want to be your friend anymore because of what you're doing. Yep, that's really good. All right, so this activity that we just did, shows us that boundaries are really different for everybody. So some people might, have a 6-foot personal bubble. They want to keep everyone at arm's length, where some people don't mind being touched and that's totally fine with them and they don't care. And so it's important that we recognize like these clues that we can get from people for what they feel comfortable and uncomfortable with. So we want to look out for both the words that they say, but then their body language and their facial expressions and things like that. So noticing these cues to be like, oh, this person's comfortable with what's happening, or maybe we should stop because they don't look like they're very comfortable at all. And so the thing is, like, no matter what someone's boundary is, we always have to respect people's boundaries because everyone deserves to feel safe and comfortable. And when your boundaries are violated, that takes away that feeling of safety and feeling of being comfortable, which really isn't okay. So now we're going to do another activity that's going to help us figure out how we can communicate when our boundaries have been crossed. So sometimes when a friend violates one of our boundaries, it can be really hard to talk to them about it because it can feel kind of weird. So with this activity, we're going to practice how you can start a conversation with your friends if they've done something that makes you feel kind of uncomfortable or you don't really like that much. So in a second, I'm going to partner you all up and read a few scenarios. And so even if the scenario isn't a boundary violation for you, just to pretend it is. And I'm going to have you practice starting a conversation with your partner. Just a note, your partner is not the person who did the boundary violation. They're just the person that you're practicing with. So you don't need to get angry at them or anything like that. They're just your practice partner, not the person who actually did the boundary violation. Also, this isn't a full conversation. It's just kind of a way to get the conversation started. So to do that, we have this phrase up here on the board that you can use to kind of help you get the conversation started. So it is, I feel or felt blank when you blank. That's a boundary violation for me. It would be better if you blank. So obviously you're going to fill in the blanks. So it could be something like, I felt, really uncomfortable when you were touching my hair. That's a boundary violation for me. It'd be better if you asked me in the future before touching my hair. So that's how you'll do it. Again, just starting the conversation, not having a full-blown, discussion. All right, so we're going to count off into ones and twos. So 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2, 1, 2. All right, so I need all of my ones to raise your hand Everybody who's a 1, raise your hand, raise your hand. Okay, great. Put your hands down. Now all of my 2s, raise your hands. 2s, 2s, 2s. Great. Okay, put your hands down. So my 1s, you know who you are. I'm gonna have you come up here and form a line. All right, coming on up, making the line. Great. Okay, then I need my 2s to come up and stand across from a 1, making a line here. Okay, great. So everyone has a partner. Look at your partner in their eyes. You know who that person is. Okay, great. So I'm gonna start out, read a scenario, and I'm gonna have my 1s start. Okay, so 1 line, you're starting. And remember, you're gonna be using this phrase up on the board to help start a conversation with your friend about this boundary violation. Okay, so your friend takes an embarrassing video of you and posts it to their Snapchat story. All right, so my 1s, go ahead and practice how you would start a conversation about this boundary violation with your 2s. Okay, great. That was awesome. You all did a great job. So now it's the 2's turn. So you get to respond to the same scenario. So again, your friend takes an embarrassing video of you and posts it to their Snapchat story. So how would you start the conversation with your 1 partner? All right, great. That was awesome, you all. All right, so my 1s, this line right here, my first person in this line, you are going to go down the middle and go to the end of the 1 line. On all of my 1s, I need you to step to your right 1 step. So you're gonna be with a new partner. Okay, everybody have your new partner? Great. All right, so we're gonna start with our 2s this time since we started with the 1s last time. So the next scenario, 2s, that you're gonna be starting a conversation about is your friend makes negative comments about your body when you're changing in front of them. So your friend makes negative comments about your body when you're changing in front of them. So how are you going to start that conversation? All right, great. Yeah, so now it's the 1's turn to practice. So 1s, how are you going to start that conversation about this scenario? Go ahead. Awesome. You all did a great job. All right, so again, my 1 line, we're gonna shift down, person at the end, you're gonna go down to the other end of the line. All my 1s will shift down, you'll have a new partner for this scenario. All right, so we're gonna start with our 1s again. So 1s, you're gonna start this conversation about the scenario. Your friend posts an extremely embarrassing comment on your Instagram photo with the hashtag TBH. All right, so how are you gonna start a conversation with that friend? All right, awesome. So now our 2s, it's your turn to practice. How are you going to start a conversation with your friend when they post an extremely embarrassing comment about you on your Instagram with the hashtag TBH? All right, awesome. You all did a great job with this activity, so you can go ahead and sit down. Thank you all so much. All right, so I know you all probably aren't gonna actually use this phrase. I probably wouldn't use it myself because it's a little bit awkward, like, I don't know. But this is a really good example of how you can start a conversation with a friend in a way that's going to lead to a more productive discussion. Because instead of going in and blaming them and saying, you did this thing, it was the worst ever, that's gonna start a fight. With this, you're leading with how it made you feel. Like, it made me feel really uncomfortable and I just didn't like that. So can we talk about how we can do things differently in the future? Because I want to stay friends with you. That's really the goal of this is, you know, when you're having these conversations with your friends, you want to stay friends with them. And so saying something along these lines will really help to make the discussion better so you can stay friends with this person, you know, even long after this issue has passed. So do you all have any ideas of things that you could say that might feel more natural, you know, but without attacking your friends? Yeah, so maybe you could say something like, you know, I just didn't really like it when you did that, and like, can we talk about it? That's great. Yeah. So it's really important to know what our boundaries are and how to, you know, express that with our friends. True friends will understand and respect your boundaries. You know, like if they're a real friend, they're gonna listen to you and be like, oh man, I'm sorry I did that. Like, I'll be better. I'll not do that in the future. And we don't have boundaries just with our friends. We have boundaries with everyone we meet. And so anyone who, makes you feel uncomfortable or like, didn't like that, you can use this phrase as a conversation starter with them, because it's always important to know how to communicate your boundaries with other people. All right, so next class we'll be looking more into boundary violations and resources that you all have to be able to address boundary violations if they occur.